spanning more than 2 decades as a judicial officer. Maya is the first woman to hold the positions of Deputy Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court of Appeal. For reaction to her appointment, let's speak again to Executive Director at Casac, Lawson Naidoo. Mr. Naidoo, thank you very much for joining us again. So you were telling me earlier, in terms of how good this move is to appoint, Justice Mandisa Maya into the Constitutional Court, especially because she's the first woman taking up this position in our country.
Indeed, it is. It's a historic day for the judiciary in South Africa. It's the first time we have a woman Deputy Chief Justice. There's been a lack of proper gender representation across all of the courts in South Africa. And this is an important appointment that the President has announced today. It was always likely to happen because this was the candidate that the President had himself put forward and asked the Judicial Service Commission to give him their views on her candidature. They endorsed her candidature, and the appointment has now been made. The irony, however, of this appointment is that it means that we don't have a single court in the country that is headed by a woman judge at the moment. Mandisa Maya, as we know, is the current president of the SCA. Now that she'll take up this new position in the Constitutional Court, it means that we will not have a woman judge leading any of the divisions of the High Court or the Supreme Court of Appeal.
And that's where I was coming to, because then that means that, we have a position to fill at another very important court in our country, which is the Supreme Court of Appeal. So how important is it that, the candidate is carefully considered when it comes to her replacement?
Indeed, it will have to be. And, one will hope that there are suitable women candidates that are available for consideration for the position as President of the Supreme Court of Appeal. Once again, this is a prerogative of the President, who will have to consult again the Judicial Service Commission in terms of making an appointment of a new President of the Supreme Court of Appeal. And we certainly hope that process gets underway shortly, because we know Justice Maya will be taking up her position at the Constitutional Court on the 1st of September. So it doesn't give us a lot of time to fill that vacancy.
And it's quite interesting because the Supreme Court of Appeal, I don't know if it's because as media, that's what we cover, but most of the big, decisions that come out of there are quite political when it comes to the Supreme Court of Appeal. But let's also talk about the fact that when it comes to the Chief Justice himself, his term is not going to be very long because he has to retire soon. So is it obvious that Justice Mandisa Maya will then take up the position of Chief Justice?
Well, she would certainly, be in pole position to do so as the Deputy Chief Justice, but that's, it's not an automatic progression from Deputy Chief Justice to Chief Justice. As you say, the current Chief Justice, Raymond Zondo, has 2 years left of his tenure on the Constitutional Court. And at that point, the President at the time will have to nominate a new candidate as the Chief Justice. And it's certainly to be hoped that we will see, not just at the Constitutional Court and at the SCA, but far greater gender representation across the various divisions of the High Court across the country, including appointing women, as I said, as heads of those divisions.
And I think also what I also find interesting, Mr. Naidoo, is the fact that she is the first, president of the Supreme Court of Appeal who wrote a judgment in isiXhosa and delivered it in isiXhosa. And in her explanation during her interviews with the SCA, she was saying that, this is because she wants inclusion, not only, from the interpreter in courts, etc., but from people being able to feel comfortable and explain themselves in their language, which is something that is in our Constitution and something that schools have even been trying to do in terms of medium of instruction, etc. So it's her term, I guess, we could look forward to it.
Indeed, I think, she's demonstrated some, innovation and, including issuing the judgment that you've just spoken about. But there, I think there's a lot of other experiences that Justice Maya will bring to the Constitutional Court. In an interview earlier this year for the position of Chief Justice, she spoke at length about the kinds of innovations that would be necessary to increase access to justice, to ensure that people understand the legal processes and court processes, bringing technology into play to increase the efficiency of the court system and the like. So I think, she brings a wealth of experience, particularly as running a busy court, such as the Supreme Court of Appeal, which she has done very successfully.
Thank you very much for speaking to us, Mr. Naidoo. That was Lawson Naidoo. He's the director at Casac.